So there is a very well-known phenomenon within the medical field that proves that our mind can influence our physical reality. Now, the phenomenon I am talking about is, of course, the placebo effect. Now, the placebo effect is really fascinating because it sits within the realm of where science and spirituality converge. Specifically, it gives us an incredible example of how science links to the law of attraction. The law of attraction, or manifestation, is all about how we can use our minds to shape our physical reality, and the placebo effect is an amazing example of this in action. It's all about how we use our minds to influence our physical health and our physical body. Hey everyone, I'm Georgia. I'm currently doing a master's degree in consciousness, spirituality and transpersonal psychology, and in my free time I love to study manifestation, and I really love to use my studies to find areas of science that link to the law of attraction. In this video I'm going to talk about the placebo effect and how we can use the science of the placebo effect to enhance our ability to manifest, particularly to enhance our ability to manifest physical healing, but also it potentially has implications for how we can just manifest in general. Now, through my master's degree, I have done some research into the placebo effect, and let me tell you, the literature about the placebo effect is very complicated, especially when it comes to the physiological processes that underpin the placebo effect. So, for example, there are many different placebo effects which have been found in different conditions, such as pain, asthma, the immune response, and many more. And because these are all such different conditions, there are different processes in the body which underpin these different placebo effects. So in that sense, there are many placebo effects. But what we're interested in, and what I've specifically pulled out of the research, is what instigates the placebo response in the first place, because that is what is going to be key to enhancing our manifesting abilities. So firstly, what is the placebo effect? Essentially, the placebo effect is where someone is given some sort of inert substance. So they believe they're getting some form of medication or treatment, but they're actually getting some substance that doesn't actually do anything, a sugar pill, for example. But because they have an expectation that this substance is going to make them feel better, they have an expectation of some therapeutic benefit, then they actually see those beneficial results. They actually experience some form of physical healing, despite the fact that they didn't receive any actual treatment or active medication. So the placebo effect is all about the rituals surrounding the therapeutic act. It's about the psychosocial context. Psychological in the sense that it's about the patient's expectations and beliefs. Social in the sense that, for example, it's affected by the doctor-patient relationship, so the doctor can influence the patient's expectations. So the question is, how can we harness this placebo effect to manifest physical healing, or potentially something beyond physical healing, within our own life? When we look at the literature on the placebo effect, it seems like there are two main ways that this effect seems to work. Now, the first way that we're going to look at is expectation. Now, expectation is a conscious event where someone has basically an expectation of some form of therapeutic benefit. They expect that they're going to heal. There have been many studies which demonstrate that positive expectations surrounding healing can actually facilitate healing, regardless of whether there is any medication involved. So one example, there was a study that was done on patients who have asthma. Some of the patients were given a real inhaler and some of the patients were given a placebo inhaler. And what was found was that the placebo inhaler was just as effective as the real inhaler because of the patient's expectations. Now, in another study that involved people with Parkinson's disease, patients were told that they had a specific probability of receiving dopamine. So that probability could be 25%, 50%, 75%, 100%. Basically, there was a differing likelihood of whether they were going to receive dopamine. But in actual fact, none of them received it. They all received a placebo. And what happened in this study, the patients which had a higher expectation of receiving dopamine because they'd been told a higher probability, those patients actually had a higher release of dopamine within their body despite receiving a placebo. And another really interesting study, and a kind of sad study as well, was one that was done on Alzheimer's patients. And this study basically indicated that when people have cognitive impairments, that can actually reduce the placebo effect. And so this study again indicates the importance of expectation when it comes to actually experiencing physical healing. Now, this effect also works to enhance treatment. So people who aren't receiving a placebo, they are actually receiving some form of active treatment. The placebo effect can make that treatment more effective, and this has been shown many times through studies which compare the use of open administration versus hidden administration of medications. So basically the difference between whether a person knows they are receiving a medication, so they can expect some therapeutic benefit, versus if they don't know they're receiving a medication, so obviously in that case they won't expect any benefit. Now, one study which demonstrated this used 4 painkillers, and what they found was that the dose of painkiller that was needed to reduce the pain by 50% was higher when people didn't know they were receiving the painkiller. So when the administration of the painkiller was hidden, they needed a higher dose in order to reduce the pain, as opposed to when they knew they were receiving the painkiller. So basically, the placebo effect through expectation has been found to enhance medications, but also to facilitate healing where a person is receiving no medication, they're receiving a placebo instead. So how can we harness the power of expectation to manifest physical healing in our own lives, or potentially manifest something else? Now, I think the first obvious way to build up your expectation would be to use affirmations. So write yourself some affirmations about whatever it is that you're trying to manifest, and use these often. If you use your affirmations often enough, then what should happen is that you start to reprogram your mind. So you're building up this expectation of whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. Now, I think the second way that we can harness the power of expectation, especially if you're trying to manifest physical healing, is specifically to research positive experiences of people who are going through the same thing as you. Really focus on only listening to, only reading stories of people who have success with whatever it is that you're trying to address. It's really important that you try and avoid negative stories surrounding whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. Now, this applies to anything that you're trying to manifest, but especially when it comes to physical healing, because in addition to the very well-known placebo effect, there is also something called the nocebo effect. And this is when people have negative expectations, and as a result they experience negative outcomes within their body, whether it be a treatment not working well or symptoms worsening. The nocebo effect is something that's very real and something that we definitely do not want to harness. So really do your best to avoid any negative stories that might build up negative expectations for you surrounding whatever it is that you're trying to change. Really make a conscious effort to only focus your energy on positive examples. So expectation is one very powerful way to harness the placebo effect, but there is also another way that the placebo effect seems to work, and this is through conditioning. Now, this is where a conditioned response is paired with a specific stimuli. So for example, some medication and the effects of a medication might be paired with some neutral stimulus, maybe some drink or something. Now, what happens after repeated associations between the conditioned response, i.e. the medication, and the neutral stimulus is that after a while, the neutral stimulus alone can elicit the same response as the medication. And this has actually been found in studies. One example is through the immune response. So what does this mean in practice? How can we harness this conditioning principle to enhance our own manifestations? The conditioning aspect of the placebo response implies that we can condition some neutral stimulus ourselves to elicit physical healing within our own body, or potentially condition a stimulus to manifest anything else that we're interested in manifesting. So for example, I would pick some products that I repeatedly use or some activity that I repeatedly do and put my intention into that thing. I would keep doing this repeatedly until that becomes natural to me and I just naturally start to associate that thing with my intention, with whatever it is that I'm trying to manifest. And I think the most effective way to do this would be to specifically choose something that already links to whatever it is that you're trying to manifest. So for example, let's say that you're trying to manifest clear skin. A good thing to put your intention into would be water. Hopefully all of us are drinking water every day, and water is known to help with having clear skin. So if we repeatedly, every day when we're drinking water, put our intention for having clear skin into that water, then eventually that intention should start to becoming associated with that water. And hopefully through the placebo effect, we will actually start to elicit that response in our body. I think doing it this way, where you pair your intention with something which already helps what you're trying to manifest anyway, would be the most effective, because you're already going to have some level of belief about that, and also it's going to help sidestep some of the resistance. If you're trying to put your intention into something that has nothing to do with what you're trying to manifest, then you're going to have to convince yourself that that is actually doing it. And we already know through placebo studies that expectation can actually enhance treatments and medications. So if we do it in this way, it's not just a matter of these stimuli that we're choosing just eliciting that response on a physical level. we know that through putting intention into it and expecting that result can actually enhance those benefits. So through adding our intention to these things or to these activities, we're actually making them more effective. Now there is one final finding that I want to touch on, which might have some very interesting implications when it comes to choosing either expectation or conditioning, depending on what physical response it is that we're trying to manifest. So there are some studies which basically looked at how expectation and conditioning might contradict each other. Basically, they would cause a patient to expect one thing, but they would use a conditioning response that opposed that expectation, and vice versa. So in one study they did this surrounding pain. Basically, they did a conditioning response that was supposed to reduce pain. However, they gave verbal suggestions of increased pain, and what they found is that the verbal suggestions completely overrided the conditioning response. So basically, when it came to pain, expectation was more important than conditioning. And the same thing has also been found with motor performance. And what's key to understand here is that both pain and motor performance are very conscious physiological functions. Now, the complete opposite has been found when it comes to the secretion of hormones. It's been found that expectations of an increase or a decrease in growth hormone had no effect on its secretion. However, when a preconditioning was performed with a substance which stimulates growth hormone production, then this resulted in an increase in growth hormone secretion after placebo administration, despite opposing verbal suggestions. So this suggests that when it comes to hormone secretion, the expectation has no effect. And what's key here is that hormone secretion is an unconscious physiological process. So basically, there is some evidence that suggests when it comes to conscious physiological processes such as pain and motor performance, the placebo response is mediated by expectation. However, when it comes to unconscious physiological processes, such as hormone secretion or the immune response, then it seems to be conditioning that is more effective. Now, this is entirely my own interpretation, but it makes me wonder if when we're trying to manifest healing when it comes to an unconscious physiological process, then perhaps in order to harness the placebo effect, we really need to get deeper into our subconscious to try and elicit the same response, as opposed to some conscious physiological process. So maybe for unconscious physiological processes, affirmations would not be enough unless we do them so much and so often that they penetrate deep into our unconscious mind. Now, that is entirely speculation, but I think it's something very interesting to keep in mind depending on what type of physical healing it is that you're trying to manifest. So through the placebo effect, it is very clear that our mind has a real tangible influence on our physical body. And through expectation and conditioning, we can harness the power of the placebo effect to manifest physical healing, and we can potentially use these practices to inform our general law of attraction method and manifest other things into our life too. All in all, the placebo effect is an amazing demonstration of the power of our minds, and I hope that you can use this information to improve your own manifesting abilities.